Well, gorgeous weather here at Cronulla. I've just come down with my family. They're visiting someone, and there's 6 in my family, so 5 of them have gone in, and I've come outside for a little while, and then we were going to go for a walk. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, I've come down to Bass and Flinders Point. This is in Cronulla. It's a memorial to Matthew Flinders and George Bass. Now, these guys are fascinating, absolutely fascinating. They're pretty young when they first meet. George Bass is 18, and he's on the ship the Reliance, heading out. He's a surgeon, and he's on the ship. There's some info here that I've just been reading about and adding to my knowledge already from, I think, primary school. I learned about them, and he meets one of the mates on the ship, Matthew Flinders here, who's 15. They both come out to Australia, and they decide to go exploring. We're talking 1796, I believe 94 is the Reliance trip, and then in 1796 and then 1797 they decide to head out. They've got this thing about Tom Thumb. Their first ship is called Tom Thumb, and they go for a little trip down the south coast. They find down kind of Lake Illawarra. That's the first voyage, and then they head off a second time in a bigger ship called the Tom Thumb as well, and they discover a bit more of Australia. And both of them take journeys together as mates, and they also head off separately as well. So George Bass, for example, over here, fascinating guy. At every opportunity he goes into the mainland and kind of seeks to learn, and he writes in his diary all about the flora and the fauna that he finds. He travels down with Flinders and kind of goes around and circumnavigates through Van Diemen's Land, which is Tasmania now. They name the Bass Strait after George Bass. Then George Bass basically goes on this nearly 2,000 kilometre journey all around Australia. The kind of length of which is incredible if you think about the kind of technology that he was using at the time and some of the hardships that he would have faced. And that's beaten only by Matthew Flinders. We famously hear about his cat. Matthew Flinders eventually circumnavigates around Australia itself. And he had a bigger ship and much more backing by poor George Bass, but he also, did incredibly well. So that was in 1803, I believe. Yep, arrives back at Port Jackson in 1803, and he travels back to England, and he writes this big kind of Terra Australis and all about Australia and what he finds here, and that's kind of the first literary kind of major reference to our nation being called Australia, and that's one of the ways in which it starts to kind of sink in. George Bass unfortunately lost at sea at 1803. They don't know whether he met up with some Spaniards or he was shipwrecked by a storm or anything like that. They're really not sure. But this is called Bass and Flinders Point. They kind of sailed past here at some point, and as you can see, gorgeous weather here today. Cronulla's really putting it on. So there you go, a short little clip of Cronulla and Bass and Flinders Point, the memorial here that you can see if you travel down this way.